Hey guys, welcome back. I have the fender slash hood for the 49 Ford pickup in the spray booth. I blew it off really good. I have not wiped it down yet. I'm warming it up in here because it was only at 60 degrees. Now we're almost at 80 degrees. So another couple minutes and then I'll turn the fans on and start wax and grease removing this. I'm gonna do it twice. I'm gonna do it once with wax and grease remover and once with Safeway window cleaner. I always use a solvent base first, then I used a window cleaner after that. Now I'm not super worried. This is getting gunmetal gray with the satin clear. I'm not super worried about getting a little dirt in it because I've decided I'm gonna paint the whole truck once it's together. So basically we're just panel painting it right now because no matter what you do and how hard you try, that satin clear is never going to match, especially if you're painting it on different days, and I already know that was going to happen. So what we decided, me and the owner, was I was going to continue to panel paint it, and then he's been taking the parts back. He has the cab together, he has the doors back on the cab. He's going to come get this either tomorrow or Wednesday, get this put on the truck, and then I have to paint the bed, the rear fenders, and then the tailgate. I'm gonna get those painted, and then he's gonna bring the whole truck down assembled. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the bed of the truck and scoot it back on the frame so that I can get to the firewall. Or I'm sorry, the back of the bed wall. The back of the bed wall and the back of the cab, so that I can spray all those. And then I'm gonna do an overall paint job on the whole entire truck. I'm gonna put 1 to 2 coats of color down, and then I'm gonna put 2 to 3 coats of satin clear over top. And then everything should uniformly match when I'm done with that, because it'll all be sprayed at the same time. So the reason why we're panel painting it is it's nice because the door jambs, this is a driver, he's gonna drive it all summer long. So we just wanted to get the door jambs and everything painted really nicely, and then, you know, I'll just tape everything off and then shoot the exterior. I have a new gallon of MP170 in the mixer. There's the satin clear. We're actually gonna be using a different brand of clear, a matte finish clear, and I forget what company he got, but we are going to be using a different clear because Summit only had that in the satin or a flat. They didn't have a matte finish satin clear, or a matte finish clear. So we're gonna be going with a different brand, and I'm not sure what it was. So let me get some wax and grease remover, and I'll show you how I'm gonna wipe this down. Okay, we're gonna spray it down really well, let it sit for 30 seconds or so, and then start wiping it with these lint-free towels. Going to change the filters in the spray booth, but I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to wait until I paint the whole truck before I put new filters in it, and then I'm going to rip up this paper on the floor and repaper the floor too before we go to paint the truck. Stuff on. You want to really saturate it so that it pulls the dust and dirt out of your sandy parts. And then we're just going to go over it with these towels and wipe it down. As you can see, it's dripping on the floor. That's totally fine. You want to really get this thing wet. Camera, I'm going to turn it off and wipe this down, and I'll be back. Okay, the first washing down is done. Now I'm going to use this Safeway window glass cleaner, and I'm going to go over the whole thing again. This takes a little bit longer to dry usually, but we're going to go ahead and do the same process. Just going to wipe it down real good. And you'll notice the towel will want to stick to the panel more than with the wax and grease remover. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this, and then when I come back, we're going to mix up some MP170 epoxy primer, and we're going to use it as a sealer. We're going to seal this part with the epoxy primer, then we're going to put a couple coats of base and 2 coats of clear on. So I'll be back. Okay, when I was wiping the part down with the second time, I could feel a little static electricity because that's fiberglass. And how I can feel it is I have arm hair. So by having arm hair, when you're wiping the panel down, you can feel it standing up a little bit. So I'm going to do an old trick. I don't have one of those guns that you spray to kill the static electricity. I never had one of those. I have always used isopropyl alcohol and have never had a problem with it. So what I do is I go out there and I tack cloth off the panel with a new tack cloth. This one's just about brand new. And then I put a little bit of alcohol in my spray gun. So after I get done tack clothing off, I just mist a light coat on the panel and I let it dry. And it just will evaporate off. But what it ends up doing is it kills off the static electricity. I've been using this for 30 years. I've been doing this, and it's always worked for me, and I've never had a problem with it. So just something I learned a long time ago, and I've always used it, and I've never had a problem with it. So let's go out there, tack cloth it off. Let's spray a little alcohol on it to kill that static, and then we'll mix up some MP170, and then we'll put a light coat of MP170 on there just to seal off the whole piece as a whole, because I've done it to every piece on the truck, so I want to continue to use it. And like I said, we only need a little bit. Now I don't know if I've never used this alcohol in one of these sleeves before, so hopefully it doesn't eat through the sleeve. I don't think it would. I mean, lacquer thinner doesn't like eat through it, so I highly doubt some rubbing alcohol is going to eat through it. So let's go out there and get this tack cloth off and spray it down. And I need to get some new filters in my respirator real quick. Okay, I've got some new cartridges here. Just open them up. Now the old cartridges that were in here for a while, so I ended up pitching those. You're supposed to change them like every 30 days. I put my respirator in a bag, and I've never had a problem with it. I usually will go a little longer than that. These are the wrong ones for this mask. Might be. All right, let me look at this. I might have grabbed the wrong ones. I grabbed the wrong ones, so I put those ones back. I put them in a Ziploc bag. I didn't realize that this is a Gibson mask, not a 3M mask. Or Garson, whatever it's called. Now these ones should be correct. Okay, and we'll put our pre-filters on. Okay, that's ready to go. So now we're going to go out there and get this tack cloth down and spray it with some alcohol. I just like to wear a respirator when I spray the alcohol because I really don't feel like breathing in a bunch of rubbing alcohol. I don't know if it would harm you or not. Probably would be my guess. See, it instantly evaporates pretty much. Now I'm going to throw this away and get a new cup. And we're going to mix up some MP 170. It's a 2-to-1 mix, and then I'm going to add 1 part reducer. The reducer is to thin it out, to make it more like a sealer and not a thick epoxy primer. So we'll go to our 2-to-1 mark, and this cup sucks. This one's been washed too many times and it's kind of worn off. Some hardener. I mixed this for 30 minutes, that can, just to make sure it was stirred up really good because it was a brand new can and I didn't want it to not be completely mixed. Now, the directions on the MP 170, I believe, calls for acetone to thin it with. I've always used urethane reducer for 30 years and have never had a problem with it, so I always just use urethane reducer. I don't know why they call for that, but they do. Mixed up a little too much probably. Guess we'll put on a little bit of a thicker coat. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this stirred up in the gun, and we are gonna go put a coat of this on. And then while this is setting up for 15 minutes, we'll get the gun cleaned and get the base coat mixed up. Now we're using the Summit base coat, and it takes a tiny bit of hardener in it. It is 3 capfuls per quart of paint. Okay, now we have a nice even coat, all gray over the whole panel, and this stuff also helps filling in any sanding marks. I only sanded it to 320 grit, and I know it's a metallic gray, but that I put the sealer down, which definitely fills in any of the little sanding marks that may be left. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff cleaned up, and then I'll be back and mix up paint. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and mix up some base coat and put a couple of coats of that on, and then we'll be ready for a couple of coats of clear. Like I said, I'm only gonna put 2 coats of clear on because we are going to sand the whole truck down with 600 grit wet sand, and then we will reapply 2 coats of base and 2 to 3 coats of clear when the whole truck's together. Now, when I go to paint the truck, again, as a one whole piece, after I 600 wet sand it down and I wash it off a couple times with wax and grease remover and the window cleaner, I am going to put a coat of binder over the truck before I put the paint on. Now the reason why I'm going to do that is, let me get it out here. So this is it right here. This is an Intercoat Clear. It's a binder. What it's going to do is it's going to put a clear coat over the whole truck, and it's going to fill in any minor sanding marks so that that metallic doesn't stick funny into the sanding marks. So when I go to paint the whole truck, this will go on first. It's kind of the same thing as putting epoxy primer on, but I want to use this so that the color shows through this, so that we don't have to use as much base coat to cover the truck up. So basically now we put that epoxy primer on there to do the exact same thing that Intercoat Clear is going to do. But obviously you don't want to use Intercoat Clear over your 2K primer. You want to put an epoxy primer down. You want to have that to seal off anything. Because when you sand your 2K primer, if you have maybe gone through the Bondo just a tiny bit, that epoxy primer is going to seal over that surface. I don't know how well the Intercoat Clear would do. Plus the epoxy primer, it gives it a barrier, you know what I mean? It kind of just seals off all your 2K primer, your bodywork and everything. It kind of just puts like a shell over top of it. And then from there you can put your color on and your clear. But obviously we don't have to do the MP170 when we go to repaint it. So now this is a 4-to-1 mix, and then we have to add 3 capfuls per 32 ounces of hardener. But I'm only going to put about 2 1/4 caps in here because this is not a 32-ounce cup. So I got to keep that in mind. I do have some 32-ounce sleeves up there, but I don't really waste them when I'm only using one or two panels, because the 32-ounce sleeves are more money, and I only use them when I'm doing like an overall paint job or if I'm painting quite a few parts at one time. But since I can get this whole hood, a coat of paint on the whole hood with a cup full, not even a full cup full, there's no point in wasting the bigger cup, because while I'm waiting for that coat of paint to dry, I can come in here and mix more into this cup. Now I don't know why Summit uses a little bit of hardener in their base coat, but they do. So make sure you don't take this stick and put it back in that gallon, because you're going to have hardener on that stick and you're going to get hardener into your paint, and then you're going to screw it up. Also, with Summit base coat, you cannot take your leftover base coat and pour it back in that can. If you take this leftover base coat and pour it in that can, you're going to ruin whatever's left in that can, because it's going to have a hardener in it, and it's going to make clumps and lumps, and it's going to ruin your paint. So you got to keep that in mind when you're doing certain things that require hardeners and stuff like that. You got to make sure that you realize you can't save any of that stuff. I'm sorry, this is not a 4-to-1 mix. This is almost a 1-to-1 mix. I'm sorry. I mix it just under 1-to-1. I don't know why I was saying 4-to-1. I'm thinking of primer and clear. And if you notice, I don't ever strain any of my paint. Okay, the reason why I don't strain it is I'm only going to put 2 capfuls because I spilled a little bit. So there we go. So the reason why I don't strainer my paint is because these lids have a built-in strainer. So I don't need to use a strainer pouring it into here, because it's going to strain it as it comes out of the cup through the gun. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stirred up really well, and we're going to go put our first coat of base on. Okay, that's the first coat. And as you'll notice with this Summit paint, it's a little weird because you spray it and it's really blotchy at first. A little bit light down there on the fender. You can see you can see primer through that. But as overall, you can see now it doesn't look as blotchy as when it was coming out of the gun. Okay, I'm gonna mix up a little bit more, not a ton, because I don't want to waste a bunch of paint. And we're gonna do a real light coat about 16 inches away from the surface. And then we're gonna let it dry, and then we'll put 2 coats of clear on. Now for some reason, when I'm moving my tripod around with the camera on, if I bump something, it turns the camera on. So you might, in this video, there's a couple spots where you might see a picture of a wall, but sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing that. But I'm gonna get a little bit mixed up and I'll be back. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for 15 to 20 minutes. I'm gonna get everything cleaned up and get ready for the clear. Okay, pretty much dried up, looks pretty darn good. Now I'm gonna mix up some clear. It is a 4-to-1 mix, and we're gonna add 20% reducer. So four parts clear, 1 part hardener, and 20% reducer. I'm using a slow hardener. The slow hardener will slow down the drying process, which will help it flow out a little bit flatter. Not going super crazy, don't even put 2 coats on, and we'll wet sand it down when we do the truck. And then that'll be it. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up, and then we will put the first coat of clear on. I'm just going to do 1 coat, the first coat on camera, and then I'll just do the second coat off camera, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, I'm gonna let that flash off for 10 minutes. I'm gonna do 1 more coat, a little bit heavier than I did that coat. With this stuff, you don't have to really pile it on heavy because you're not gonna wet sand and buff it. So it doesn't really matter that much, but I'm gonna put the second coat on off camera. I'm gonna do the exact same thing I did with this one. Slow down a little bit, put it on a little bit heavier. Other than that, that's it. So I'll be back in a little bit. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes or so since the last coat. It's starting to dry. Still a little blotchy looking until that clear really dries, but not bad though. So that's it. I'm gonna bake this at 140 degrees for a half an hour. Let it sit overnight. Tomorrow night it'll get picked up. Go back to the guy, and then the bed, tailgate, and rear fenders will be coming. So we're getting there, one step closer to getting this truck finished up. This truck's going to Good Guys in Columbus, Ohio, beginning of July. So I need to have this done within the next couple weeks here so he can test drive it and see how it's going to do. Motor and everything's not real fancy on the truck. Nothing is fancy. We're not doing a perfect paint job. We're just doing a real nice paint job, a satin finish. Probably going to get nicked up, scratched up, but it's cheaper product. So in a couple years of driving it around, if it gets messed up, it's easy. We can just sand it down and respray it again. You know, no harm, no foul. But obviously, if you're putting a show quality paint job on something you're going to drive every day, you're going to nick it up, ding it up, and then it's going to cost you a lot more money to bring it back to that again. So, all right, guys, that's going to end this video. If you like what you're seeing, please like, subscribe, share, hit the thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Any questions or comments, feel free to ask. Other than that, I will see you guys later.